And hello, a very good afternoon to all of you joining us today. We get a lot of questions on Brexit and very difficult to answer them because obviously at the moment we don't really know what's going on. So we asked Giles here to put a little bit of information there together just to help demystify it a little bit or just to protect yourself, particularly because there's so many unknowns. And that's precisely what he's done. So, Giles, thank you so much for doing that. We do appreciate it. Thank you again for doing another webinar with us. We very much appreciate that as well. And yes, so I guess I'll just hand the floor over to you.
Okay, thank you, Soraya. Well, I'll say what I can. As you say, it's not an easy subject, but
not an easy subject.
Well, not right now because we don't know what's going to happen.
No, but I guess people need to plan now, don't
absolutely,
they? As
absolutely.
much as they possibly can. And I think it's more a question of the safeguarding rather than what is actually in writing.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. Well,
okay.
Look, I'll hand over the floor to you then.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, the question is your business ready for Brexit? Well, the government certainly isn't. They don't know and they can't tell us at the moment what the deal will be, if there will be a deal, and therefore in just over 6 months' time we're going to be out of the European Union. And there could be some quite serious implications for business because at the moment we're in the single market, we're in the customs union, we have free trade between all of Europe and ourselves, and that might change quite suddenly. So how do you plan for it? Well, the first thing I think you need to do is look at your own business. This is of course assuming that you have trading relationships with companies or others in Europe. Look at your business. Look at what the risks might be if you didn't have the freedom to trade that you have at the moment. And that means really doing some research. What would the customs procedures be if you were not buying from or selling into Europe? What would the tariffs be if we were under World Trade Organization rules? I'm no expert on any of those things, but you do need to do some research, and you also need to look at your existing contracts because they may have terms. For example, they may be written on the basis that you are within the European Union. Once you're outside the European Union, does the contract still apply? So look at all of that and then think about, well, possibly a Brexit clause for your contract to deal with it. But broadly speaking, do research, think about the problems, and then think about talking to your trading partners in Europe. As I say, the risks, there's a lot of uncertainty, and the risks will vary from business to business, but they include, for example, financial. If there are new customs or customs duties or tariffs, how will that affect you? Human resources. If you rely on getting staff from Europe, will there be visa restrictions that make that more difficult? Or indeed, if you're sending people over to Europe to do work there? Regulatory and legal issues. There are a lot of European standards and rules governing products and services, not least websites and other things. Data protection. If there's divergence between the UK and Europe, how will that affect you? If there's a change of law, that might affect you directly. And on a more sort of basic level, when we leave the European Union, if there are customs checks coming in which weren't there before, that could slow up deliveries. You need to take precautions in advance, maybe pre-ordering with longer lead periods than before. There's a territorial risk too. Sometimes contracts are written assuming that the whole of the European Union is covered or a particular area. Is that going to change? Is the way your contract works going to be affected? And the dispute mechanism, if there's a clause in there dealing with the resolution of disputes, will that still apply after Brexit? Hopefully it won't make too much difference. The English courts will still be the English courts and judgments will still be enforceable overseas, but there could be differences, and these are all things that need to be looked at. One way of not resolving but trying to deal with the potential risk is to have a Brexit clause in a contract. In fact, I was asked to write a Brexit clause for a cross-border contract on the Monday after the referendum result. I had a meeting with German clients in the city we were involved in negotiating a very long-term services contract, and the first thing that they said was that they were concerned at what might happen if we left the European Union and there were new tariffs and duties. And that particular contract, it took a long time to be signed, but it did have a Brexit clause in it to deal with the situation. And that's what, more than 2 years ago, we still don't know what's going to happen with Brexit, but a clause in a contract can be useful. And here is an example of one which is fairly general. It doesn't say what the solution will be, but what it does say is that if Brexit happens and it has an adverse impact on one or both of the parties, then they will sit down together and try and sort out a way of resolving it. And that might involve changes to the contract. And there is a second paragraph, which is an optional and a slightly risky extra, which says that if you can't reach agreement, then one party or the other might be able to terminate. Now, having a clause like that, as I say, doesn't solve a problem, but it does create a structure, like any dispute resolution clause in an agreement, for getting to the point of resolving matters. And that, to my mind, is very useful in a situation like this where there's all this uncertainty. Here there's a more specific Brexit clause, which basically says that if there are new duties, then the costs will be borne by one party or the other. There may be circumstances where you can achieve that, but often the more general approach is better. Now, whether or not you'll have a Brexit clause depends to some extent on what your trading relationship is. If you're entering into a new contract between now and the date that we leave the European Union, then I think it is very important to have a provision in there which deals with Brexit. And Brexit clauses, I should say, are a little bit like force majeure clauses. You know, if something unforeseen happens, we'll try to sort it out. If Brexit happens, we'll try to sort it out. So if there's a new contract, put a Brexit clause in. If you've got an existing contract, then obviously it's more difficult to change things. But at this stage, having done your research, if you haven't already talked to your counterparties in Europe about it, get in touch with them, discuss with them what the potential risks might be, and see whether you can't reach agreement on, if not the solution, should there be World Trade Organization tariffs, but at least a way of sorting the matter out between you by sitting down and trying to agree a change. And there could, for example, be a situation where you're importing goods from country A, and that might result in new tariffs. But if your counterparty has a factory or premises in another country, it could be that diverting the goods through another way, through another trade agreement, might overcome the problem. So there are all those issues to be thought about. But if, as I say, if you can reach agreement, you don't have to rewrite an existing contract. You can reach agreement by email exchanges and formally confirm it between you. At Contract Store, we've developed a document which has got about 12 different sample Brexit clauses that you can download from our website. You will need probably to get legal advice if you're going to use them, because one particular clause dealing with Brexit might have implications for other clauses in the agreement, so you do need to check it over, but hopefully that will give some ideas. The other thing that I would mention here is that the government has just issued a paper on trading with the European Union in the event of no deal, and that's quite a short read. It's easy to download from the government website, and the details are here.
Okay, super. So, Giles, thank you very much for that. I guess it's very difficult with Brexit coming up because nobody really knows what's going to happen. So what you're suggesting here makes complete sense to me, that it's just, safeguard yourself, put something in there that's going to, I suppose, give you some wiggle room, when things come through. So
Exactly.
hopefully it's not going to be WTO rules, but it's likely at this point, isn't it? So I don't know if we're going to try and find a link. So if you see one below the video, we found a link. If you didn't see one below the video, there isn't a link. We can't find it as to what the actual rules are for the WTO, because it is quite complex. I think you were saying that before.
Yes, it's quite complicated. I'm no expert on WTO rules, but
Right.
I mean, you can research it online. There's a
Right.
lot of information out there.
A lot of information, but go wading, I think is the
But
term.
if you start with the government paper which was issued recently, I mean, there were several of them. I've only referred to one, but
Okay.
there was a whole group of them, and I think they're going to issue altogether 84 papers on what happens if there's no deal.
Okay.
Some of them will be relevant to different businesses, but they're quite straightforward and easy to read, and they will give you pointers for finding the information that you need, because you've got to research it a bit before you can say to your counterparties in Europe, well, this is what we want to do, or what we want to think about.
Right. Okay, well, good. Okay, well, look, that link is below the video, so have a look down there and you can see that, and I suppose that will give you a place to start to go for the other 84 or 83, because we're not going to put all of those links up.
I think it was 84.
84, okay, and another 84.
Then they've already issued, I think there were 8 of them issued last week or the week before.
Okay.
They're going to be issuing more.
Okay, so basically keep an eye on that link, because there will be more things added to it. So I think that's kind of the lesson from that one. Okay, wonderful. Okay, well, look, Giles, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time that you've given here, and thank you for that. As you all know, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with Giles. The email address for you again is?
You can write to Giles at gilesdixon.com.
Giles at gilesdixon.com. You can also get access to him on our platform through Startup Richmond. He's on the experts page, or you can email us directly at web@startuprichmond.com, and we can get your questions over to Giles. But of course, there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to this subject matter.
Don't ask me what the deal's going to be.
Right. Paddy Power's taking bets on that one, so yeah, I can imagine. So lovely. Well, thank you very much for your time again. Very much appreciated, and thank you all for tuning in.